Well, hello, everybody. I am so honored to be here to share this panel with you all. This is about the life and legacy of Hazel Dickens and also Alice Gerrard. We're going to talk about music. We're going to talk about collaboration and process and how Hazel and Alice came together to create the beautiful body of work that we all love and appreciate, and a lot of us sing. And we're also going to talk about Hazel Dickens as a songwriter, and I'll talk a little bit about Rounder Records and a whole host of things. And I would like to leave time at the end also for questions. So if something comes to mind, hold it, because we will get to it at the end. Well, first of all, I'd like to introduce everybody on our illustrious panel. And then I have a brief introduction just to tee up the conversation, and then we'll start with lines of questions for everybody to hopefully inspire a great conversation for the next hour and a half or so. So settle in, here we go. I'd like to first introduce Alice Gerrard. With a career spanning over 60 years, Alice has worked with many old-time and bluegrass greats and in turn earned international respect for her significant contributions to the music. Known for her groundbreaking collaboration with Hazel Dickens during the 1960s and 70s, the duo Hazel and Alice produced 4 classic LPs on Rounder and Smithsonian folkways that influenced scores of young women singers. Alice was involved in the founding and launch of Bluegrass Unlimited magazine, and in 1987 she founded the Old Time Herald. She is a creative force and a tireless advocate for traditional music and has won numerous honors, including induction into the IBMA Hall of Fame alongside Hazel Dickens. She's also a Grammy nominee. Yes, deserves applause. No small feat. Yes. Among her recent performances, she has appeared as a featured guest with Della Mae on a series of concerts celebrating Hazel Dickens' centennial. She's also appearing tonight as a special guest of the Hazel Project. Okay, next up, I'd like to introduce Marian Leedon-Levy. She is actually a last-minute addition to our panel, but we are nonetheless very excited to have her join us to contribute to our conversation. A co-founder of Rounder Records and Down the Road Records, Marian was mostly involved with publicity and promotion in A&R, particularly in the earliest days of the collective. From the beginning, she was both participant in and observer of the many changes of women's roles in music and business. Her love for the music and for the history remained the same after an academic background in history, literature, and theory. She has been fortunate to be able to do what she loves. We are delighted to have her. Next up is Ken Irwin, a man who may need no introduction in this neck of the woods, but nevertheless, we will introduce. Ken Irwin is a co-founder of seminal roots music label Rounder Records and more recently Down the Road Records. Now in the 6th decade of his career, he has worked with a remarkable array of bluegrass, old-time, and roots music artists, a small sampling of which include Hazel Dickens, Alison Krauss and Union Station, Tony Rice, Bela Fleck, Tony Trischka, J.D. Crowe, Del McCurry, Norman Blake, the Johnson Mountain Boys, the Gibson Brothers, Steel Drivers, Blue Highway, and the Whitstein Brothers, Sierra Hull, and James King. Quite a roster. In 2016, he was inducted into the Bluegrass Music Hall of Fame. Next up, Dudley Connell. Team Dudley. Dudley Connell's passion and talent have established him as one of the best and most beloved bluegrass artists of his generation. He is an IBMA Hall of Fame member with the Johnson Mountain Boys and an award-winning artist with iconic groups including Longview and the Seldom Seen. Yes. Additionally, Dudley has a distinguished career managing the Smithsonian Folkways office and serving as audio archivist for the National Council for the Traditional Arts. Among his fascinating career, filled with countless highlights and achievements, he cherishes having recorded and toured internationally with Hazel Dickens. Next up, Laura Orshaw. Yes. A millennial powerhouse in bluegrass. That's what I say about Laura. And and Joval Festival Artist in Residence for 2026. Laura excels at maintaining the sounds of traditional bluegrass within the genre. She was the first woman to win the Spigma Fiddle Player of the Year. Yes. And she has toured internationally with artists including Del McCurry, Ricky Skaggs, Jim Lauderdale, Old Crow Medicine Show, Sarah Jarosz, Becky Buller, among others. Laura has also had a successful career with the Grammy-nominated Poe Ramblin' Boys and 2 IBMA awards. She is highly sought after as an instructor who has taught numerous camps, workshops, and kids' academies. Laura's sophomore solo recording project is scheduled for release sometime in 2026. This is an all-star panel, y'all. I'm so honored to be here with these people. And so now I do have an introduction just to tee up our conversation. When Hazel Dickens and Alice Gerrard first met in the 1950s at a pickin' party in the D.C. area, little did they know that their encounter would forever change bluegrass music. The gravitational pull of their lead and tenor voices toward each other was undeniably powerful, and by the mid to late 1950s, they began performing in regional bluegrass and old-time music scenes at bars and house parties in Baltimore and Washington, D.C. In the early 1960s, they officially joined forces to form the duo Hazel and Alice. Their first public performance was at the 1962 Galax Fiddlers Convention. And by 1965, they had released their debut album on Folkways, titled Who's That Knocking? And Other Bluegrass Music. They were in some ways an unlikely pairing. Dickens was older, raised in a large, strict, primitive Baptist family in a hardscrabble coal mining community in West Virginia, while Gerrard was a free-spirited college graduate, steeped...
No, I never got through.
Oh. College student.
College dropout.
Okay. Oh, I like that. Yeah. Woo. All right, let me rephrase. Even more colorful. Gerrard was a free-spirited college dropout. Love it. Steeped in the folk revival and the old-time tunes featured on Harry Smith's Anthology of American Folk Music. And she came from a suburban West Coast family. Their bond was forged by a mutual love of the high lonesome sound of bluegrass music and their fortitude to perform it at a time when female-led groups were virtually unheard of. Between 1965 and 1976, their collaboration produced 4 seminal studio albums, and they performed at college campuses, regional venues, and major festivals, including the Newport Folk Festival, I believe the year that Dylan went electric.
I was there.
Yeah.
I think it was the same.
Yeah,
I was there, though.
The Smithsonian Folk Festival and Bill Monroe's Bean Blossom Festival. In 1968, they also performed on racially integrated tours of the South, organized by civil rights activists Bernice Johnson Reagan and Anne Romaine, who co-founded the Southern Folk Cultural Revival Project. Fellow artists on these tours included Elizabeth Cotton, Doc Boggs, Ola Belle Reed, and Johnny Shines. This tour was a pivotal experience for both Dickens and Gerrard on creative and political levels. Though much of their repertoire celebrated older traditional style songs, their music became more politicized as they wrote about social injustices. Dickens channeled her feelings into such powerful songs as Don't Put Her Down, You Helped Put Her There, the Yablonsky murders, and Black Lung, inspired by the death of her brother, a song that was later used in the Academy Award-winning documentary Harlan County, USA. Likewise, Gerrard wrote Beaufort County Jail about Joanne Little, a black woman charged with murder for defending herself against a white male guard who had tried to sexually assault her. Through these recordings, performances, and political activism, Hazel and Alice set a template for subsequent generations of women in roots music. They have inspired countless musicians across generations and genres, especially women such as Emmylou Harris, the Judds, Alison Krauss, Laurie Lewis, Rhiannon Giddens, Valerie June, Kathleen Hanna, and even Exene Cervenka.
Yeah. I love it.
Banjoist Claire Lynch has noted, Hazel and Alice were the first voices I heard in bluegrass that represented women. And guitarist Molly Tuttle has said, I first listened to Hazel and Alice at the age of 12, and their music changed my life. In 2017, Hazel and Alice were inducted jointly into the Bluegrass Music Hall of Fame. As a beautiful coda to their catalog, in 2018, Free Dirt Records released Sing Me Back Home, the DC tapes, 1965 to 1969. This album features 19 rehearsal recordings from Alice's archive, digitized with the assistance from UNC's Chapel Hill's Southern Folklife Collection, showcasing Hazel and Alice at the peak of their collaboration. So, the first set of questions I have, actually sort of leading in from that idea of thinking about your archive and those rehearsal tapes. And first of all, thank you for saving those. Not only are you an incredible singer and songwriter, an artist and collaborator, but you also have become sort of an accidental archivist over time. And that release is as a result of the fact that you saved those tapes and then unearthed them, which I think is really great. So what I wanted to ask you about was, I don't know how many of you have heard that recording, but it's a really great release, and it's such a beautiful snapshot of your working process.
Yeah, you can hear the kids screaming in the background.
Yeah, it's recording. You really get a real life snapshot of what it was like to build that collaboration.
Yeah.
And so and I'm just thinking about the song selections on there and how, interesting. You guys were sort of exploring what worked, maybe what didn't work, And so I was curious, when you started working, of course, there's so much to ask you about working with Hazel, but I'm curious about how you found your songs together.
Well, we each would bring something, it's like,
which I think is really great.
and we'd find them in other places. I remember when we recorded the song Mining Camp Blues, it was because we were looking for more songs about coal mining and stuff to go on with this tour. And so Dick Spotswood, who at the time lived in D.C., was a record collector. And so I called, and he was a good friend of ours, and I called him up and I said, hey, Dick, you got any 78s that we should listen to? He said, oh, yeah, I have the perfect one by Trixie Smith and her Down Home Syncopators called The Mining Camp Blues with, who was playing the cornet on that? Oh, anybody know? Famous. Louis.
No, it's Louis Armstrong?
Louis Armstrong, yeah. He's playing on her Trixie Smith's recording. He's not playing on ours. But he played, it's a great song. And it's still, you can still find it on YouTube and stuff like that. Their version of it. So there were things like that. We mined the Harry Smith anthology to a certain extent.
And for those people that might not be so familiar, in a nutshell, what is the Harry Smith anthology?
It was a set of LPs or vinyl or whatever they call it now that covered it was of previous recorded music. Harry Smith collected old recordings, I guess, and then he put them together in this amazing set of famous songs and tunes that covered anything from Cajun music to blues to religious music and on and on and on, and it was fabulous. And it came out around 1952, I think.
Yeah.
And it kind of blew everybody's minds who were kind of like me, trying to get into this stuff. And so we got from him, and we liked country music too. We covered Merle Haggard's "Sing Me Back Home."
Oh yeah. For me, that's one of the highlights on that.
It's a bit of it. It's not on the Free Dirt thing. And so we liked country music, we mined things from that and old time stuff. Recordings, I guess. And then he put them together. So we were very, it was just whatever we liked, songs
And then
and
we'd
tunes
take
that
it
covered
and
anything from Cajun music,
Hazel and Alice it.
blues, to religious music, and
That deserves a round of applause, sure.
and it came out around 1952,
Well, that's really
I think.
great.
And
Do you
it
have
kind of
any
blew
memorable
everybody's
stories
minds who
about
were kind
traveling
of like me, trying
with
to get into this stuff.
Hazel for
So
anything that
we got from here.
you did a lot of traveling to play?
For me, that's one of the
Well,
highlights.
yeah.
I can think of one off the top of my head.
Sure, that'd be great.
We were playing at a festival in Canada, and Elizabeth, I lived in D.C. at the time,
Yeah, so we'd always,
Elizabeth and Hazel lived in Baltimore. Or maybe she was in D.C. by then, I don't remember. But and Elizabeth Cotton, who also lived in Washington, was at the festival too. So we traveled on the same flight, and we went up with her. We were going to come back with her. And so we get to the airport to come back, and Elizabeth, she was known as Libba. Libba,
Oh, sure.
we went through customs,
Well, that's
and
really
she
Do you have any
she hadn't traveled a lot.
stories about
We hadn't either, but
with,
so she went through customs, and they asked her
for,
if she had anything to declare. And she didn't know what the hell they were talking about. She said, what?
I can think of one off the
And
top
I
of
think
my
they said,
head.
you know, it's like, did you buy
We were
anything? Did you
playing
get
at a
anything to
festival in
eat, buy
Canada,
stuff? She
and
said,
Elizabeth
oh,
was
well,
in
yeah.
DC
She said, I
at
got
the
a little
time,
piece of pie,
and
but it wasn't any good.
Elizabeth, or maybe she was in DC.
And then we
and
had,
Elizabeth Cotton,
we
who also
decided,
lived
we were
in
very close
Washington,
to boarding time, and
at the festival
so we
too.
threw her on a
traveled
wheelchair, and
on
we
the same
rushed
flight,
to the gate,
and we were,
and it was,
went up with
they'd
her,
already
and then
gone.
come back
So then
and
we went
again.
back to the bar,
And so we get to the airport.
sat there for a while, and that was one
Elizabeth,
little thing that, traveling, it was always
She was known as
something.
Libba.
good, bad.
Libba,
Yeah, yeah.
we went through customs.
I'd like to hear a little bit about what it was like when you and Hazel reunited in
traveled a lot.
1996.
We hadn't either, but
A lot of,
So she
I
went
have a
to
quote
customs and
here.
they asked her
Apparently, Hazel
she had anything
said,
to
"A
declare."
lot of water has gone under those two bridges."
she didn't know what the hell they were talking about.
Yeah, that's true. Well,
like,
there's,
"What?"
Randy Pitts,
And I think
who
they said,
used
you know,
to
it's like, did you buy anything?
run the
Did you get
freight and
anything?
salvage in
I
Berkeley,
know Randy.
and
She said, oh,
later
well,
moved
yeah.
to
She said, I got
Nashville,
a little piece of pie, but it wasn't any good.
wanted to get us to do a tour. And so
And
we
then
talked to
we
each
had,
of us.
we decided, we were
agreed
very close to
ultimately
it.
to do that tour.
boarding
It was,
time.
it was kind
So
of
we
out
threw her on a
west
wheelchair
mostly, I
and we
think, but
rushed
maybe
to the
somewhere in
gate,
the Midwest too. I
and
don't
it was-
remember all the
they'd already
details.
gone. So then
But
we
it was a
went
lot
back
of
to the bar.
fun. We had a great band
Sat
of
there for a
Jody
while,
Stecker
and that
and
was one little
Brantley Kearns, a fiddler from
Traveling. It was
West
always
Coast,
something.
and the bass player.
Good, bad.
Yeah, yeah.
You know who he was?
I'd like to hear,
Who
actually
lives in
hear a
Nashville.
little bit about what it was like when you and Hazel reunited.
Name some really great bass players.
Mike Bubb.
Quote here.
It wasn't Mike. Yes,
Oh, Todd
Wait.
Phillips.
Gone under those two
Todd.
bridges.
Todd Phillips.
Todd played bass.
Yeah, that's true. Well,
And it was really fun. We
Randy
went out and we were
Pitts,
well
who used
received. We went to a lot of different
run
places,
the
and
freight and salvage in
I
Berkeley.
know Randy.
you know,
And later moved to Nashville.
yeah.
So it was a good, after years apart and sort of
Wanted to-
having
Yeah.
your own careers.
Yes,
tour.
it was really a
Talked
good
to
tour.
each of us,
Yeah.
and
You know,
we
I
agreed
mean,
ultimately to do that tour.
usually I
It was
shared a
west-
room with
it was
Hazel
kinda
if we stopped at a
west
motel.
Mostly, I think, maybe somewhere in the Midwest too.
And
I
she
don't
showed
remember
me
all
how
the
she
details.
Kept
But it
her
was a lot
hair.
of fun. We, we had a
Never
great
mind.
band, Jody Stecker, and
Showbiz, folks.
I won't tell her secrets.
Tell me, Lord.
I'll let her know.
Yeah. I also have a note here that you actually did your final gig together as Hazel and Alice in 2010.
name some.
Was that the Smithsonian one?
Yeah, Smithsonian
Mike
Folklife.
Bubb,
Yeah, we did
Wasn't
it
Mike.
there.
And that was a year before she passed.
Todd
Wait.
Phillips.
She died in
Todd
2011.
Phillips.
Yeah.
Todd played,
It was playing
and it was really
David
fun.
McLaughlin
We went out and
playing-
we were well received. We went to a lot of different places.
Did you
And,
have a full band?
No, it was just David.
David,
and Hazel
David
and me.
McLaughlin.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
So it was a good,
From the
And,
Johnson
um,
Boys.
years apart and
Yeah.
sort of
Yep.
having
Yeah.
your own careers.
Wonderful
Yes.
group.
It was really a good
Betcha.
you know,
And
And it was, yeah, it was great. You know, that was the last time. We didn't know it would be the last time, but it was the last time.
Yeah, great. All right, moving along, and I'm sure we'll come back and have questions and, yeah. Well, I'm starting out with the people that knew Hazel the longest, and aside from Alice, that would be Ken and also Marion. And so Ken and Marion, you guys are kind of tag teaming some of these questions today, so please feel free to answer.
Was that the Smithsonian one?
Yeah, Smithsonian Folklife.
If somebody has an answer, feel free to chime in. But I'm curious about when you both first met Hazel and Alice. Do you remember seeing an early performance of theirs, or how did they end up in your orbit?
We first saw Hazel at the Smithsonian Folklife Festival. It was a workshop on coal mining songs. And
So that would have been in the 70s then?
71.
71.
And we were immediately drawn. We were left-wing kids, and we loved the politics and what she was doing, and her singing was extremely traditional, and really hit us hard. And we went up to her afterwards and asked her about doing a record. And she invited us over to her apartment in Georgetown, part of D.C., and we went there and talked, and she told us that she wanted to do the record with this woman that she sang with. And so we said, oh, sounds good. And then we actually first met Alice later that summer at the Delaware Valley Festival. They were sitting down. I think that's the same festival that we saw Marty Stewart when he was 13 years old, just to give an idea of context there.
And he would have been playing with Lester Flatt then, right?
Yeah. And so we talked some, and then I think we suggested that
Does Ken have a mic?
that they record in the Bethesda area with an engineer named Dick Drevo,
We
who
first
had
saw
done a
Hazel
Del
at
McCord
the
record
Smithsonian
and
Folklife Festival.
a Ted Lundy
It
record
was
with
a
us,
workshop
and
on coal
they
mining
took care of
songs.
everything. We didn't
And
So that
discuss
would have been in the
material.
70s then?
We didn't do anything. We
71.
were
And,
novices,
we were immediately
trying to learn as quickly as we
we
can,
were,
reading liner notes and trying to do everything to learn about the
kids,
music as quickly as we can. But
and we
at that
loved
point, we had
the
never heard of
politics
Hazel and Alice.
what she was doing, and her singing
And
was,
shame on us.
extremely
But, we
traditional,
learned, and that's how we came to do that
hit
first
us
record.
hard. And
So,
we went up to her
that
afterwards
wasn't-
and asked her about doing a record.
The one that,
And,
so that wasn't the first one.
She
Yeah,
invited
the-
us
the gray
over
album
to
is-
her
yeah.
apartment in
Oh, the first
Georgetown,
rounder.
part of
Yeah.
Sorry,
Texas,
yeah.
and-
I was-
Which
I was
was,
thinking about
that
Chubby
was
One.
called
there
just Hazel and
talked,
Alice?
And she told us that she
That-
wanted to
Yeah.
Yeah.
do the
You
record
often
with this
referred
woman
to
that
as
she
the
Oh,
Gray
sang
yeah,
album.
yeah,
And she said, oh, sounds good.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
then we actually first met Alice later that summer.
And Ken's memory is the same as mine, except we then did our homework and learned that there was more to Hazel and Alice than just, what our experience was personally and about the earlier
And he would have
records.
been playing with Lester Flatt.
And we're, of course, even more impressed and,
And,
well,
so we
just love the
talked
material
some, and then,
from the first album and so forth. And
I
I'll let
think
Ken, because
we
Ken and
suggested
Dudley really knew
that,
Hazel better and
that
obviously
they
Alice than
record
I did.
in
Yeah.
the Bethesda area with the engineer named
Let's
Dick
see.
Drevo, who had
I guess,
done a
one
Del
question,
McCord
I know I'm kind of jumping around a
They
little
said
bit
one
here,
record
but
with us,
I'm kind of curious,
and
since we are up in
they
the
took care of
Northeast,
everything. We didn't
Ken
discuss
and also
material.
Marion, I'm
We
curious
didn't do
about,
anything. We were
and also
novices,
Alice, of course,
trying to
any
learn as
Hazel
quickly
and
as we
memorable
can,
Hazel and
reading
Alice gigs in the
liner notes
Boston
and trying to get
area or in the
everything
Northeast?
to learn about the
that you
music
recall?
as quickly as we can.
Well,
but,
probably the
at that
most famous
point,
or
we had never
infamous
heard of
was
Hazel
a
and
show
Alice.
for the
Um,
Folk Song
and,
Society of Greater
shame on us.
Boston.
But,
I don't
you
know if
we
people
learned,
have gone to any of their shows
that's
or
how we
remember,
came to do
but
that
they're a
first
little
record.
bit like Club Passim,
So, that
where you're
wasn't,
only allowed to open your hands
The one
about
that-
3 or 4
so that was
inches
the
when you
first
clap. That's what they expect. It's a very, very polite audience. And we showed up for the show. I don't think either Hazel or Alice were ready for this, but the audience was probably 95% women, and they were screaming and yelling. They were, every place that you can think of sitting, and then some, and standing, and it was something that I had never experienced. I mean, they were, they had definitely tapped into the burgeoning women's movement, and it had reached way beyond. It was sort of for the Folk Song Society. It was a little bit like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Like, who are these people? Because they certainly weren't the Folk Song Society.
And Hazel years later mentioned, how surprised, and I don't know, she mentioned you feeling the same way, Alice, that the women's movement was kind of a big shock, because that was at the same time that the first women's music festival in the Midwest was being held, and almost all of the women's liberation movement, which was still in its infancy at that time, as well as a large lesbian contingency that was very vocal, did a lot of applauding and shouting and so forth. And it was at the same time that at Rounder we did the first women's liberation rock band record. So, I mean, there was this going on all at the same time. And Hazel and Alice, unbeknownst to them and us, were the heroes of that, certainly that part of the world, which was an entirely new thing to, I mean, these were not people who were typical bluegrass fans.
Right. Yeah, I remember, I think it's the same concert I remember in my, someone, I don't remember well, but and people were sitting on the floor, and we were kind of clueless. I mean, we were somewhere in the South, and some in the early 60s sometime, and somebody came up to me around the swimming pool. We were staying in a motel, and this friend of ours had been to a meeting, and she came banging back, and she came to the swimming pool, said, "Hey, you guys, this is so great. I just came from this women's liberation meeting." And I said, "What's women's liberation?" So we were kind of clueless in a lot of ways.
And Ken really put it very mildly when he said we were sort of left-leaning or something. Our background was, the anti-war movement, which was, obviously much more a part of that. And even though the women's liberation movement was still in its infancy, that was very much a part of our sort of countercultural world.
Yeah, it's interesting to think, I don't think Hazel ever identified herself as a feminist per se.
She preferred the word humanist.
Humanist, which I think fair play, sure.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to think about her background, and coming from where she came from, a huge family of, she was 8 of 11 kids, growing up in a very conservative, strict, isolated place in West Virginia, to think about how far she actually had to travel, not only physically to get out of where she was, but also just psychologically to make that leap to enter, the world and to make the move from West Virginia to Baltimore. And she had siblings that were going up, looking for work. There was an Appalachian diaspora in Baltimore in the, post-war, late 40s, 50s. People were really starting to migrate out of that area. And Hazel had the fortitude to decide that she wanted a life outside of her small community, and step in and sort of be a citizen of the world and live in an urban area, which actually kind of leads me back around. I realize I didn't quite, I kind of leapfrogged right into your collaboration, but I'd love to hear a little bit about your recollections of when you first met Hazel. I mentioned that in my introduction, but there she is coming to Baltimore, getting her life established there, doing sort of factory work and things like that. And you and Jeremy Foster moved to that area. If you could just sort of set the scene, what that was like.
Well, her family had basically a lot of them had moved north, and a lot of them were in Baltimore. And it was, you know, I remember the thing that sticks out in my mind was something she said to me one time, that somebody corrected her for using the word pop instead of soda. And that was like, that stayed with her for a long time. And, but the first time my husband, Jeremy, said, there's this little girl with a great big, little skinny girl, I think he said, with a great big voice, and you've got to hear her sing. And so I said, okay, great. And then Mike Seeger, who was kind of a linchpin in many ways to this, was living in Baltimore, working at the TB sanitarium there. And Hazel's brother happened to be there in the sanitarium, and Mike would get his instrument out and diddle around, and her brother, I don't remember which one it was, heard him and came and said, oh yeah, you play the mandolin or whatever. Said, you should meet Hazel, my sister. You know, she's a good singer. And he said, come. And he took him home for dinner one night, and that's how Mike met Hazel. And then it was Baltimore had, you know, I can remember so much going on there. I mean, there was a bar on every street corner, lots of bluegrass bands. There's a book, by the way, if anybody's interested, by Tim Newby, called Bluegrass in Baltimore or something like that.
That's a great read. I just finished it.
Yeah. And
Hazel is mentioned in there,
yeah.
you know.
And she would get this now and then jobs with the bluegrass band, you know, playing the bass and stuff like this, and they would let her sing a song, Kitty Wells song. But she met all these other people too, the lefties who were living around, because she knew this woman named, she was introduced to and became friends with this woman named Alice Taubman, who was a sort of a lefty social worker who lived and took in people that, you know, needed love and confidence stuff. And so many of the people around Elise were like Joe, who became Hazel's husband at some time, but mainly later. But mainly Elise and Hazel got very close. And Elise was very supporting of Hazel, and I think it really boosted her confidence a lot. And then she was hanging out with all these other people that were, it was a country city scene around there, and they'd have parties in their house on Eager Street in Baltimore, and there'd be Buzz Busby would come, you know, and other people, and then the city guys, you know, and it was just wonderful. You just play music all the time. And so she met this bunch of people who were different than she was used to. And you have to kind of admire how she leaped that gap or between, because it was a pretty, you know, a bunch of hippies and left-wingers and sing-along, singing labor songs. And, you know, I remember one time the Bluegrassers said, let's go over to whatever his name's house was, and let's break up the jam. They brought their banjos, and it was like sitting around, they were singing labor songs and folk songs, and in comes this group with banjos and mandolins that start playing, and it's so
Clash of the genres.
There was a lot going on there, and the same in Washington. It was not quite as much as Baltimore, but there was a lot going on in Washington too. Yeah.
I think.
Does that answer your question?
I think so, yeah. No, it sort of fills in some.
I think it's sort of important, and following up on what Alice was saying, that the saying about it takes a community to build, and there was her husband and Mike and Alice and
Ralph Rinsley.
Willie Fauchette.
Willie
There were
Fauchette.
all these people there that helped with her acculturation and getting into it, and it still takes a pretty incredible person to be able to weed through this. And I know at first, even with Mike, she wasn't trustful. She said, what is this guy interested in our music for? And she was, put up all these barriers, and he had to like jump through hoops to win her.
Yes,
her,
that's very true.
Trust and respect. Yeah.
Wow, it's great to kind of hear, sort of a little bit of that backstory, and that is sort of the arena where you ended up meeting Hazel and forming that duet, ultimately. Yeah. Great. Well, I'd like to sort of move on to Dudley for a moment. Speaking of Washington, D.C. and encountering Hazel, I know I've asked you this question before, but it's a great story, and I'd love to, if you're open to it, to tell us how you initially met Hazel.
I hate to do this to you, Ken, but I have to throw that to you because Ken was responsible. I tell you how I became familiar with her first, and then I'll maybe lean on Ken again for a second. But we used to play a lot around Baltimore, and there was a radio station, and regardless of where we'd been, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, we always came through Baltimore on a Sunday early evening, and they had a Bluegrass show. And every week, Alice, they would play the Green Rolling Hills of West Virginia every week, and I thought, wow, that's a really not only powerful singing, but it had the sophistication of like cosmopolitan living, but at the same time the voices were very rustic and real and soulful, and that's what attracted me to Hazel. And I went to see her at Glen Echo Park, which is a amusement park just outside of town that's now turned into more of a cultural center. But at the time, I saw Hazel there with some DC bluegrass folks that you would know, John Kaparakis, Akira Utsuka, some of those guys. But I didn't have, my wife was saying, you ought to go introduce yourself, go meet her, because I was trying to learn to play. And I said, I'm not going to go over there. I was so shy. But how I actually met her, Ken, tell your tale.
We had a mutual friend named Walt Saunders who we actually met because he was the reviewer for Bluegrass Unlimited of our first Bluegrass record, One Morning in May by Joe Val. And we wrote to Walt thanking him for the review and asking him some questions. And over the years, we became very friendly with him. And one day, he and his wife invited Hazel and I over for dinner, and thought it was nice. And he played this music of this band that their daughter was going out with a banjo player, a guy named Richard Underwood, and that
was his first mistake.
And at the end of the evening, we were going to go, and Walt and Hazel hugged, and I shook hands with Walt, and then his wife Ruby sort of grabbed me and held on, and she said, "You are going to see the Johnson Mountain Boys on Sunday, aren't you?" And I didn't have any choice at that point. No. So we went that Sunday to see the Johnson Mountain Boys at a club called Susie's. In what town?
Sykesville, Maryland.
Sykesville, Maryland. It was really hard to find. We were glad that we got there. So we walk in. This is 2:30 in the afternoon when we got there, and we walk in, and the Johnson Mountain Boys are playing, and the crowd, the dance floor is totally full, and I'd say 80% of the women were in rollers, and Hazel was country, but this was. This was country for her. So that's how we saw the Johnson Mountain Boys. You want to take it from there, Dudley?
Yeah, I'll pick it up from there, Ken. And anyway, so we're playing in this. Let me explain this building to you. So there was you would walk in the front, and there was a bar in the front, and then two swinging doors, like saloon doors, like you see in the movies. And that's where the stage area was. And it was a big room, not big, maybe 50, 80 people could get in there. And stage set on the end, and they would scatter sawdust on the floor. And the women in the curlers that Ken had mentioned would come out, and they would do their finest moves. And and so it's a cinder block building and no windows, the real kind of a honky tonk. And in walks Hazel and Ken, who I recognize from the Rounder records, because I'm getting off topic just a little bit,
That's okay.
I do want to address my association with Marion and Ken. I always looked at Rounder as being the gold standard in independent records. I mean, you had there's a seriously. And I don't mean that idly. The covers looked better. The liner notes were wonderful, and our goal was to record for Rounder, and we eventually did do that. And because of our association with Rounder, Hazel being a label mate, we also got associated with Hazel, and we recorded some with her. We toured some with her, and we developed a friendship that lasted till the day she died.
Really beautiful.
I did.
That's on my question.
This is the most crazy story. Hazel was doing a showcase at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, and I don't know if you folks are familiar.
In March of 2011, and she passed away like a month later.
Well, she actually passed away, I think, due in part to this trip.
Oh.
She told me, I'll tell you about the trip, and then I'll tell you about the other thing. So this was in Austin. The place was full of kids. The South by Southwest has changed over the years, and now it's rock and roll and electronics and all kinds of forward-thinking tech stuff, But they still have a lot of music, and thanks to Ken, and what was the name of that? Hardly Strictly Bluegrass. They got Hazel. They wanted Hazel to showcase at South by Southwest, which was, it couldn't have been more different than what was going on in the streets outside. But so they had this little ballroom just outside the main entrance to is it the Chelsea, Sally? The Driscoll, thank you. The Driscoll Hotel, and it was, and you see these, it was a little small room, smaller than this. And we saw all these young kids come in, and a lot of women who were familiar with your guys' work together, and this little old lady comes in, and she didn't have her guitar on, and we helped her get up on stage. She was light as a feather. She was so thin by this point. And I remember one thing I remembered, her sense of humor. Dave helped her with her guitar. Dave strapped her guitar on, and she says, "Are you trying to feel my breast?" And what was kind of funny about that is it lightened the mood with all these kids who had no idea of what she was about. And I'm gonna send this next remark out to our sound man working out here. Soundman, Hazel would start with that song that you guys did today. The Hazel Project, that holy ho, holy holy, that one. Yes, yeah, Lonesome Pine or something. Well, the way we had arranged it is that Hazel would sing the lead on the verses, the da 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 da, and then I would come in on the chorus. And she would flip to tenor. And when she hit the tenor line, it was like 3 times louder than her lead voice. And I was joking with the band. I said, Alice, watch this when she hits that chorus. Watch the sound man's. And indeed. So when it comes to that, take me back to the sound man is rushing to get to the levels to pull him down. I mean, all the red lights are going on, But anyway,
It's actually very similar to what happened with Joe Val, because both of them were very soft-spoken generally. And then, Joe would hit stuff and, it would, just push people back. In the same way. Yeah.
but anyway, to finish off this story about South by Southwest, Hazel got sick on the plane on the way home, and she told me, and probably you too, Ken, that there was a air vent over her seat that was blowing directly on her, and she caught a cold, which turned into bronchitis, which then eventually.
Full-blown pneumonia, I believe, right? And then,
Exactly.
yeah.
It's a very, very sad story, but a wonderful woman and what a wonderful experience I had traveling with her.
Yeah, I'm glad that you were on that last gig with her. That's, pretty special that you were there.
I just wish I knew that she was that sick. I actually didn't see it coming. Hazel, to me, much like Ken and Marion, almost, and Alice, they're almost to be bigger than life. They're the people, like my dad. I remember when my dad passed away, I laughed at the guy who called me. I just thought, no, my dad can't die. Hazel can't die.
Right.
Bigger than life figures.
Sure.
John Duffy was another one in my life.
Yeah. Well, on that note of working with Hazel, I guess a question for both you and Alice is, what was it like to record with Hazel? Do you have any memories of being in front of the microphone in a studio situation with her?
I remember when we recorded Who's That Knocking, which was the first Folkways one.
1965.
Yeah. We did it in a place called Pierce Hall, which was in the All Souls Unitarian Church on 15th and Harvard in Washington, D.C., which had a really great room, which was acoustically really nice, and different people, like Charlie Bird had been recorded in there and some other people. And so we recorded there. Peter Siegel, who lives in New York, recorded us. He came down to a party and heard us and said, and then we recorded with him. And we went into this hall, and Chubby Wise, if you know who Chubby was, and he was playing at that time at the famous bar and restaurant, which was a dive across the street from the Trailways Depot in D.C. And I don't know who he was playing with. He's a fiddler, for those of you who don't know what he played. And he, probably it was the Stoneman family, because they played there a lot. And I didn't know Chubby personally. None of us did. Our friend Tom Morgan, who was also a local musician who lived in Tacoma Park, said, I've met Chubby a time. I'll go down there and ask him if he'll play fiddle with you. So he went down there, and he said, Chubby, these are these two girls that are going to make a record, and they'd really appreciate it if you could help them out playing fiddle. He said, I believe I will.
That's great.
And so we recorded in there, and it was old time. I mean, they didn't splice, and there were no tracks. It was, you could sing the song, maybe once or twice or three times until you kind of get it, and that was it. And, there wasn't any, took us maybe a couple of days, something like that. And I guess we had practiced a lot for it. And then we also recorded in studios, which was okay, and we had some good, that guy, and what was the guy in Boston that recorded the last Rounder record? Do you remember his name?
Nagy?
Yeah, Nagy.
Yeah.
John Nagy?
John
He
Nagy.
didn't record, he mixed it, I think.
Did he mix it? Who was?
Yeah, it was because it was in D.C., because we used Carl.
Ken.
I was talking to Alice. This is private.
We're all among friends.
It was somewhere near Somerville. I remember because I was staying at the time with the Rounders.
Yeah. But we recorded in D.C.
Oh,
the
where? Where did we record? Do you remember? This
No,
may
can
be
look it
taking
up.
too long.
Yeah.
Isn't memory a wonderful thing?
I know. I've got a great joke about that.
Well, the question being, what the process of recording with Hazel and what it was like to be in the studio to sing with her. And Dudley, I'm sure you also have some memories of being in the studio.
Yeah, the way it would typically work with Hazel, it was always the Johnson Mountain Boys. So we would back Hazel. It would be not just me, but the whole band. And she would send us generally a cassette tape. And if I was supposed to sing on it, she would send me the lyrics to the song and where she wanted me to sing. She ran it.
Yeah.
I was just basically there to do as I was told, and to try to make her sound as good as I could. And that was my job, and I tried my best to compliment her. That's the way I feel about music, just in general. I think a job is to compliment what's going on around you. And that's what I tried to do with Hazel. I don't have any specific memories of recording with her, but I think the only thing I can remember for sure was the studio. It was a Bias Studios in Springfield, Virginia, which is real close to Washington, D.C.
I have sort of a funny story.
Yeah.
Where we were doing, I think, a couple songs for the coal mining record in Nashville, and laid down the whole track, and there was a problem with her vocal, and she tried over and over again. There was a slight bleed, meaning that her vocal came through some of the instruments, and so in order to mask that, she had to sing it the same way, and that's not the way Hazel was. She sang what she felt, and it was whatever she felt then, and 2 minutes later, she might be feeling something different, and she would, improvising all the time, and it must have taken us hours to finally get that. Whereas some other people sing the same way every single time, and we know musicians who will take the same break every time they do a song, and others improvise all the time. But that was harrowing.
Wow, harrowing. Well, it speaks to her really unique gift, and something that really sets her apart from other singers. What was actually coming to mind for me, Ken, is maybe just a brief anecdote about this, about what Hazel was like. She would go to other people's recording sessions, like Johnson Mountain Boys sessions and other artists on Rounder. What was she like sort of as a studio mate?
She would come to the sessions with me. She would bring hard candies. She would bring the Bill Clifton songbook.
I love that.
She, for years, I don't know, Alice, you know how far back, but she would, whenever she liked a song, she would write it in one of her notebooks.
Yeah.
And, she would bring her notebooks to the studio. And she would, tell people if they missed a word. Sometimes she would tell singers, I think you could phrase it this way, just to improve it, and I think in a very, very gentle manner. She was really sort of part of the team without being official, and she also went along in some early visits when we went to visit Junior Sisk. I think it was Wyatt Rice and Santa Cruz at the time. But we went down, and Junior Sisk was the lead singer, and Hazel sort of gave me legitimacy, in being, if it's okay with Hazel, you must be okay, and that really, helped in many cases, sort of bridging that gap. With my being a Yankee and probably not looking like most of the bluegrassers at the time.
I like to think about Hazel in that sort of supporting role and showing up for other folks and developing artists and recognizing talent. I think that's just another beautiful facet of her skill. Laura has been sitting here waiting patiently, soaking in the stories.
I am. I'm loving every moment of this.
Well, we are so happy to have you because I think you bring a really unique perspective to this conversation. We have people that knew and worked with Hazel and loved Hazel. And your access point is through recordings and just being a fan. So I'm curious to hear a little bit about how you first encountered Hazel and Alice's music, and how did that affect you as an aspiring musician? And you're coming of age, like, what, in the 90s, like early 90s?
Yeah,
when you
that's
were
probably when I started. Yep.
playing music out in Pennsylvania, right, with your family band?
Yeah,
And,
yep.
you
Got the
know.
whole family here this weekend, too, at Joe Val, so
That's
it's
so
pretty
great.
special.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Well, I have my notes up here, unlike everybody else, because I can improvise on the fiddle on stage all day. But I can't improvise on the talking, so especially not with this crew. But I got introduced to Hazel and Alice's music through my grandparents, and
Yep.
they were about probably 5 years younger than Hazel, and actually this day 1 year ago is when my grandmother passed away.
Oh, my
at
goodness.
94, I think,
Wow.
95,
Yeah.
and she passed away on my grandfather's birthday, and he had passed away about 9 months earlier.
There's a
So-
song in that somewhere,
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
telling you.
I didn't really put that all together until
Yeah.
we're sitting here, but my granddad would let me hang out with him in this very special time after 3 o'clock dinner and before 7 o'clock Jeopardy. So there was this time in the middle.
The sweet spot.
Where we would go to his workshop and he would tinker on projects that he had, and he loved antiques and collecting things, so he usually had, you know, different boxes of odds and ends that he would let me pick things out and play with. But he had a record player, and we'd always listen, and really he rotated between 2 albums, a Merle Haggard album and that Hazel and Alice Gray album. And so he introduced me to the music, and he said, Hazel is one of us. That's how he just described Hazel's one of us. And I think just that characterization that, you know, he'd never met Hazel and Alice. He loved music, but he could tell from what she was saying and how she was saying it that he was one of us. She was one of us. And I guess I wrote something about my grandparents not long after they passed away. And what I took that as one of us is intelligent, deeply caring, working class people that had integrity and steadfast morals and were connected to family music and nature. And you see all of those themes all throughout Hazel's music and her songwriting. And I think that a lot of what she was able to do that my grandparents appreciated is bring light to stories of people that often were overlooked. And she really cared about shining a light on that and whatever she could do through music or through activism to make things better for those people. And I think for me, growing up in Pennsylvania, it was mining and lumbering all around where I grew up. And my generations before, that's what my family did. So it's, you know, you could see the physical signs of those industries still all over the place, and a lot of the legacy of the people that were connected to the town. And I think for me, Hazel's music filled this gap of understanding of where I came from. And I think that other people in my age, sometimes like that helps us translate who we are, where we're from, and why we're attracted to the things we are and the messages that are meaningful to us. So I think that just having that whole body of work from someone, you know, with a long life and who was so prolific to refer to and see those transitions in her life, see how it connected to what was going on in American culture and politics in the world, see like what she was experiencing and going through in her life, and kind of just have that to look back to in such a real and raw way was really important to me and other people that I've talked to from my generation.
Yeah, that beautiful response. Yeah. Well said, Laura. Yeah.
The story that I think I'll start and then let Alice finish. But one of the most moving experiences I think I've had in the music took place in Nashville. And Hazel and Alice fans probably have heard the story about how Naomi Judd of the Judds bought the Gray album at a secondhand store for $1.25. and brought it home and started listening and fell in love with it. And it gave them the idea, which they never had, that two women could sing together. And they've talked about it and it's been recorded. But there was a Rounder showcase down in Nashville during DJ Week, I think it was. And Riders in the Sky were on. And when Riders in the Sky finished their set, Doug Green, who was sort of the voice of Riders in the Sky, brought Naomi out, who was doing the MC work, and he put his arm around her and said, Naomi, we've known each other for a long time, haven't we? And she said, yes. And said, do you remember the first song that you and your daughter sang together? And she said, yes. I still get choked up. And she said, it was the sweetest gift, a mother's smile. And then he said, who sang that? And he said it was Hazel and Alice. And then Doug turned around and said, and here they are. And they came out onto the stage. And Naomi was not one of those people to lose, composure, but, her jaw was on the floor. And then Alice maybe could then they went back after the show and sat down together. Maybe you can take it from there.
Oh, I'd love to hear more about that.
Are you sure? The time I remember.
As Charles Cronkite would say, you were there.
Surprise!
Amazing. Well, but seriously, I think I was probably so that my brain shut down or something. But I do remember the time that Naomi was having a birthday party. It was in Nashville somewhere, and somebody was organizing, and they asked Hazel and me to come and surprise Naomi on her birthday and be there. So we did that.
Different.
I remember that was a. Well, shoot, I'd like to get a copy of that.
That's why we have these things.
Where's an archivist when you need one, really?
Oh, Lord.
Wow. Well, this conversation has sort of leapfrog in a bunch of different directions. There's so much to talk about with the individual careers of, Hazel and also Alice. Before I forget, I also do want to mention, it's interesting that Hazel, I know I should have done this at the top, and my apologies, but it's interesting that Hazel's centennial was in 2025, the same year that Alice released her memoir. And if you haven't read it, there is a beautiful chapter about her relationship and friendship and collaboration with Hazel, but also about all of the other amazing activities and song collecting and community building that you've done over the decades. So I would highly recommend that people pick this up if you're... Sure, it's called Custom Made Women Blues. It's Alice's memoir that was released in 2025 through UNC Press. I just wanted to give a shout out to that because it's no small feat to put your life in a book and share it with the world. So...
well, it's not my whole life.
No. Yeah.
And Jen, speaking
Yes.
of UNC Press,
Yes.
the Rounder book by
my
David
goodness.
Mancini
I read
came
that.
out
David.
the year before that,
Yeah.
and also
Thank
has
you
a
for
chapter
mentioning.
on Hazel and Alice.
Yeah.
It's also an amazing read. If it's
Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning that, Marianne. Yeah. Didn't we ramble? Isn't
Yeah,
that what
and
the title?
Yeah.
Didn't they ramble?
And they
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. And it's the
I
story of
remember-
Rounder Records.
There'll be information on how you can get this book on the merch table, which will be up somewhere. Oh, yeah, there's
Yep.
Becky.
Yay.
Okay, great.
That's great.
I love
Excellent.
that story. Is it a lie?
Yeah. I don't-
Maybe I don't know if it's.
Maybe that makes
Maybe it's
online.
Yeah,
You have so many things are online.
Yeah, I know.
Well, during the course of my research, I don't know, I didn't really mention this along the way, but I am researching a book with the goal of writing a biography of Hazel Dickens. So maybe that's one of the stories I can kind of like sleuth, track down the veracity and whose memories are correct.
We could check with Ranger Doug.
I will.
And you could probably get some great photos from Betsy Siggins.
Taking a note now on that mental note, yes, Betsy Siggins. So I think actually, I'm kind of wondering if there's questions that could further our conversation, or, this is an amazing opportunity to ask questions of people that knew and loved Hazel and Alice. We have the world experts here, so I'd like to open it up for questions. Sort of town hall style. Yep.
I have a question for Alice, and it could also be for Dudley. Just thinking about, you mentioned like going to bluegrass jams and folk jams back in the 60s. And I'm thinking, or 50s even, in the beginning, we talked about that. That was like 70, 75 years ago. I'm wondering what it was like socially what it was like, but also about the songs. At that point, were there anyone bring a song and saying, I learned this from my grandpa or my great-grandpa or great-grandma who came over from Ireland or Scotland?
Shall I say something? Well, I wouldn't call them jams. I mean, that wasn't what was going on, at least for us. I think that things like the Folklore Society in D.C. would maybe have an open jam that people could go to, but we were not interested in that. We were interested in playing music, and it took place at there were a bunch of us, Pete Kuykendall and John Kaparakis that you mentioned, other people, and we just get together at somebody's house and play music. And the Bill Clifton songbook was very present there, too. And we just sing, we'd pick out and take. It wasn't a big jam, but it was, somebody played banjo for a while and somebody else would play banjo or whatever like this. It wasn't a jam. And I don't know. Did they have jams? Do you remember anybody having jams? I mean, they might now more. Like here.
Well, that's what I meant. So was it similar to just people getting together today? Did it feel different?
Well, I don't remember. Everybody, it was like taking turns. It wasn't like a big group of people all playing together at the same time. Song share, maybe? No song share. I mean, if you sang with one or two other people or by yourself. It wasn't like we must spread this music around and get everybody singing together or whatever. The Pete Seeger did that, and that was a whole nother thing. And so we were just doing it in small groups of people we knew. There was a community. It was a large community. And we didn't sort of announce, like, this song comes from blah, blah. That's like stage patter. I mean, we knew who it came from, and we could talk about it to somebody. But, yeah. So does that answer your question?
Well, yeah, I guess
How about
I was
you?
also just wondering where you and Hazel learned the songs from.
Oh.
Brings us back around to the top of our conversation.
Well, from everywhere. I mean, you get them from recordings before we started writing songs, and we still get them from recordings or other places. But, there was just a lot of material out there. And we listened to the radio, we wanted to do, I remember we tried to do one of Ricky Nelson's songs, I forget which one it was, and then Merle Haggard. We loved Merle Haggard and Willie Nelson. And we went to park shows. That was happening all around. They had these music park shows. And you'd go on a Sunday afternoon, you'd pack up the car and just go on, pick up a bunch of people and go and listen to music all afternoon. It was a place where touring musicians would stop and play, and they were all over, around D.C. and Baltimore, and down in Virginia and Culpeper and Watermelon Park and New River Ranch and Sunset Park. And you just learned it. You listened to it, and listened to it, and it wasn't written down now. I mean, it might have been somewhere, but not in our. We just listen. It's an ear thing. It's like it's how people learned music in the old days. From one another, listening. And it's still the most important thing, I think, when you're trying to learn. Okay, I'm through.
I don't have a whole lot to add. The only the only thing I would say to add to what Alice said is that when we started touring and started playing festivals, we would get together with other professional musicians, and it wasn't exactly a jam. We just play songs that we all knew. And a funny story that I remember about, we were playing with this place called Waterloo Village, and it was in New Jersey. And Del McCurry and the Dixie Pals were there, and the Johnson Mountain Boys were there, and Del really liked the Johnson Mountain Boys because we had this traditional thing that he grew up with. And so we would hang out together, and sometimes we would sing. Most times we just hang out together. But this one time we were actually jamming, and we'd been playing for the better part of the evening, just one song after another, anything we could think of. And it got to be maybe 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. We were ready to, wrap it up and head back, and we decided to sing a gospel song as our closing number. This is out in the middle of a field, cars all parked around and RVs and such. And we decided to sing A Beautiful Life. You guys know that each day I'll do a golden deed. But it's got this bass part that leads into the chorus. Life's evening sun is sinking low. And so we're talking with Del, and this is before the boys were actually even playing, and we're trying to figure out who was going to sing what part. And we kind of got it figured out, and then you hear this voice from the back, and it was Del. He said, "Well, I'll sing the bass." And he actually did.
Hey, speaking of, I was just sort of, as you were telling the beautiful story there, Dudley, my eyes were wandering to the photos on either side of the stage here. And Alice, I just wanted to point out this beautiful picture of you and Hazel with Ola Belle Reed. Oh, yeah. And it's so sweet. And is that from Sunset Park, maybe?
No, that was from Brandywine.
Brandywine, okay.
The Brandywine Fiddlers Convention.
That would be in Pennsylvania, right?
And they also later started having a Brandywine Bluegrass Festival, too. Mm-hmm. But this was probably the old Fiddlers Convention.
Around what?
I'm thinking that was the Strange Creek Singers played there one time. That was...
Oh, yeah. That was kind of a side project for you and Hazel.
It was a group with Tracy Schwartz, mm-hmm. Mike Seeger, Hazel, myself, and Lamar Greer.
Yeah. One beautiful album that you guys
It's one of my favorite
together.
albums, actually. But we were probably joking around with Ola Belle.
Yeah, that's a great shot.
Yeah, I love
the sisterhood.
Yeah.
There's a good sisterhood.
I mean, Ola Belle was this amazing person.
Would you say she was a mentor in some ways?
Well, she was certainly one of the people we knew and listened to. I mean, we just listened to, I think about people I was listening to, it was Molly O'Day and Wilma Lee Cooper among the women, but also Bill Monroe and Stanley Brothers and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so. Great. More questions?
Alice, you said that it was your husband that first suggested that you go and meet Hazel or hear Hazel or something like that. And I was the thing about got to go hear this little girl sing or something, and I'm kind of wondering, like, from that moment to this is the person I'm singing music with, like, what was the in between part? So basically, what was the first song you sang together?
I have no idea. It was
one of the great
probably
mysteries.
Something from the Bill Clifton songbook. But I don't know. But yeah, so I met her and was in complete awe of her singing. I said, I want to sing like that. I didn't want to sing like Judy Collins or whoever, which was all happening at the day. The voices were all kind of pretty folk voices and there weren't these sort of gritty, hard-boiled kind of singing, and I really liked that. It was much more traditional sounding to me, and I've always liked that kind of singing. So, so we I listened to her we didn't sing together for a long time. I just hung out. But she was definitely a mentor to me, a mentor in ways of the world as well as singing.
Great. Great, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, great stories. I'd love to hear more about Hazel's notebooks, because being a songwriter, kind of a notebook nerd, and I think if you want to know how someone kind of came to their songwriting, one thing I've always loved, I remember when the first time I saw a musician like Franny and Jeannie's like songwriting notebook where they would write down all the lyrics to the songs, which is something that younger writers don't often think to do these days. So I'm just kind of curious what her notebook kind of practice was like. Did she write a lot of lyrics to songs as she was learning them? Did she write her own songs in the same notebooks as the songs she was collecting? I'm just kind of curious what your memories are about that.
First of all, I should say that's Mark Simos, and that he's doing a session at 5 o'clock talking about Hazel's music. And I saw at IBMA a number of years ago an earlier version, and if you're interested in songwriting techniques that Hazel used, do go see that. It's really exceptional. I think Hazel tended to keep her notebooks separate with the songs that were ones that she copied over the ones that, she'd hear a Stanley Brothers song and she'd, immediately try to write it down. But that most of her songbooks that she was writing on were, sometimes they'd be completed pages, sometimes there'd be fragments. I think I mentioned before that sometimes she even combined two different songs. I was listening to some of her practice tapes with Dudley and Sally a few years ago, and there were songs that she recorded that we found whole additional verses that she didn't record, and have no idea why. Maybe she thought it was going to be too long and was going to interfere with radio play, but knowing Hazel, I don't think that was the...
Yeah, I think every songwriter has different process, but mine is I scribble stuff down, and I have Post-it notes everywhere, and I have a folder, and I throw stuff in the folder, and it's just scraps of this, scraps of that, and so you go back and visit it and say, oh, that. And also, I would record on a tape recorder always. I just, this sounds pretty good. Let's put this down so I won't forget it. So, and that's a different thing, back in, I don't know if, does Hazel have a tape recorder? Did she have a cassette?
Cassette player.
She did,
Cassette player.
Okay. Do you know if she did that? I don't remember that she did, that she recorded her stuff as she put it down. Did she also record it as she was going along?
Yeah, sometimes there'd be just
fragments. Yeah.
And sometimes whole songs.
Yeah.
And keys would change, arrangements, tempos would change.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of things. Unfortunately, there aren't dates on her cassettes. And so it's sometimes hard to figure out where she was in the songwriting process, because you don't have them chronologically.
Yeah. It's a kind of a personal thing. Everybody's different, but just keep paper around. You can use your phone to record something. I've done that in the car.
Hopefully you're pulled over.
Unfortunately, no.
I think we have time for just a few more questions. We're about to hit the hour here. Is there anyone else who's got a burning question for one of our amazing panelists here? Welcome.
Thank you. This message is for Laura. And Laura, when was it that you decided that you wanted to sing in this vein?
Well, I was listening to a lot of whatever I could get my hands on in the late 90s and early 2000s. My dad had a bluegrass radio show, so we would get CDs sent to the house. And that was pretty cool for me. I was like a kid in a candy store. But I was noticing that music that was coming out at the time was the recording techniques were more and more polished and very arranged, very technically accurate music. But, and especially the female singers at the time, there was a lot of smooth modern country influence. And to me, that was just a disconnect from what I kind of wanted to hear, the experience and the emotional impact of traditional bluegrass vocals. So I was always looking for something that sounded like those first generation bluegrass singers, more of that mountain sound. And I didn't, honestly, before Hazel and Alice's music, I didn't find that in first generation women singers, because there just weren't many that were being put out there. So I would look to like the 50s country singers, like you were mentioning, Molly O'Day, Wemily Cooper, Kitty Wells, to find some of that edgier styling. And then I try to just imagine, like, well, if there was a woman band leader at the time, what would she sound like? What would she say? What would she want to sing about? Because you just didn't see as much of that happening, and with the industry being a professional touring industry and what women were doing at the time. And I think my grandmother, too, she was really influenced by early country music. So I learned to sing from her. But let's see if I wrote something down about that, too. No, I think that's it, really.
Just an omission, I think. We haven't mentioned Rose Maddox, who did I think the first recording, and especially well-distributed recording of bluegrass, and had Bill Monroe on half of the album.
You know, I remember she was at Brandywine one year, and I'll never forget, she had a pickup band, because she didn't carry a band, I guess, with her when she was, and she said, "Okay, boys, I'm going to sing blah, 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 blah. Give me an F. Give me an F quick, boys. F is in love."
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you do it as a band leader. So we're hitting the top of the hour. I don't know if we could really top that one, actually. I'd like to thank my amazing panel here, and I'd like to give a special thank you to Marion for being here today, kind of coming in last minute, and a big thank you to Rounder Records for signing Hazel and Alice and help to create the catalog that is now the canon for so many generations of all of us in bluegrass, but particularly women. So I think that deserves a round of applause. Thank you. Yep. Thank you. And I'd like to thank Alice Gerrard, Dudley Connell, Laura Orshaw, Marion Leighton-Levy, and Ken Irwin for being on this panel today. Thank you so much.